slip the bangle on the mandrel, and you're just going to hit in there, in the middle. Don't hit the flat part or you flatten out all of your hard work. So just in here, and it'll round it up. And you can hear it when the bangle hits the bottom of the mandrel. Look at the end. You'll be able to see if it's round. And then, when you have it like this, if there's still a few little ripples in the edge, you go back on your sinusoidal stake and smooth it out. So this is pretty good. A few little ripples to tidy up. And then we'll solder some pearl pegs in here just for fun. So back on the bracelet mandrel one more time. Now you could make this oval if you wanted to, but we're not going to. The only difference is you hammer it around an oval mandrel, same way, with your taper right in the middle of the bracelet, and then you tidy up the ripples on the edges because it's formed it slightly differently. But this is good. This is where I want it. Okay, I have my anti-clastic bangle out of the pickle. Now I could stop at this point and put my pearl pegs in, but what I want to do is close this on up quite a bit, but still leaving a gap for my pearls. So what I'm going to do is mark this with my texture Sharpie, because I don't want to end up putting a peg where my solder joint is. So what I want to do is, I think I'll do 3 spots. Where I'm going to put my pegs. So I won't hammer at that spot. So what I'll do now is just take my steel bench block and rest my bangle on it. Use my jeweler's hammer with a slightly rounded face, nicely polished. So we're not going to hammer on that spot, and we are going to hammer in between those spots. So you can see where it's going to stay flared here, but it's going to curve in where I'm hammering it. Yeah. So now I'll mark the other side and hammer from the other side, just so we keep it nice and symmetrical. And the nice thing about using your Sharpie is that you can take the marks off with methylated spirits, isopropyl alcohol. So now I'm on the other side. So you can see what's happening is I'm starting to close these edges up by leaving this bit open, so I'm not hammering there at all. Now you'll get about halfway, and you'll need to anneal it again because you can feel that the metal has stopped working. So we're starting to close this up now, and you can stop at any point. If you keep going from here, we'll hammer pretty much straight down and it'll close these edges right over. But we need to anneal again before we go any farther. So go back and forth, a little bit at a time, always just a little bit at a time. When you get this the way you want it, so that keep the edges nice and symmetrical, then we'll anneal it again. Now, so I'll just circle the inside. Until it's a dull red. And you always be sure that you stop heating before your solder flows. So annealing is not soldering. Annealing is just bringing it up to a dull red and then stopping. So that's a dull red. If you heat it too much, the solder will flow and it'll undo all of your hard work. So we quench it, dry it, and then go on the bracelet mandrel. I'm just going to hold the mandrel in my lap and turn this sideways, and that way I can work on these two edges. So I'll zoom in a bit so you can see. So I don't have to look at my mark anymore because this is the part I'm going to leave open. So I'm just going to hammer a little bit side to side. So I'm not going to go any farther closed than that because I don't want to flatten this out any. I want to keep it round. So we'll have our spread part here and our closed part here. So just go around, do the rest of it, a little bit at a time. And it really does need to be a little bit at a time because if you rush this and you flatten it out, it's almost impossible to fix it. As you're hammering, it's always easier to hammer that way because it keeps it tight against your bracelet mandrel. So now we can go back and we can just make sure that this is nice and symmetrical and rounded. Make it pretty. And if you want to close these up a little bit more, you can do it with your hammer, no biggie. And when you get it the way you want it to look, it'll be time to put our pearl pegs in. So I'm fairly happy with that. And what I'll do is I'll take my 1mm drill bit and I'll put a mark right in the bottom where the peg is going to go. We don't want to go all the way through. So I'm just resting the drill right in the middle, in the bottom. And just the tiniest indentation is all we need. Don't go all the way through. If you go all the way through, it's not a total drama because you can just solder your wire in and then sand off the inside. So now I've got my double third hand set up and I'm going to hold my 0.8mm square wire so that it's just straight up and down, sitting in that little depression. Mix up your flux. Put a little bit of flux where the two touch. A 2mm long piece of hard solder. Rest it. Oh, it came off. With just gentle pressure will hold it in place, and our hard solder resting up against the spot where the wire touches the bottom. So your neutral flame, and we're going to heat directly underneath. Make sure the solder is touching the wire. And you can just watch your flux. The flux will go clear, and then shortly after that the solder will flow. And the heat from underneath will heat your pearl peg. So there, our flux is clear. And the solder, yep, so there the solder goes. Good job. So now we'll clip that, shift it around to the next one. You can see it's slightly off on an angle, but that's okay. We can just grab it and straighten it up with our chain nose pliers. So we file the end of our 0.8mm square wire flat. Position it using our third hands. And we just want to be sure that there's gentle pressure down. We don't want a lot of pressure, otherwise the wire will bend when it gets hot. So flux, little piece of solder. Place it with your flux brush. warm it up, push the solder into place. And I circle underneath just to distribute the heat a little more evenly, and to try to keep from melting anything. We don't want to melt anything. So the flux has gone clear. And there it goes. So I'll clip that, file the wire flat again, leave enough that you can grab it to twist it, reposition it, and do the last one. So have a good look where you've soldered your pegs in. Make sure that you have a really good solder join. And I just use the chain nose pliers to straighten the pegs up because I can reach right in with them. Get them perpendicular. Grab the ends with your parallel jaw pliers. Give the wire a good twist. You don't have to hold your breath. If it's a good solder join, it'll hold. Then we're going to just clip these off until they're about 2 millimeters long. And because this is still open, you can get your pliers in there on an angle. And it doesn't have to be very long, but it has to be long enough that it fits up inside your pearl. So you don't want the pearl held off from the bottom of the bracelet, but you want the peg to go far enough in that it holds it quite nicely. So now we're ready to put this in the tumbler and make it nice and shiny. So the very last thing we'll do will be to glue our pearls in. Now, because we've soldered at these 3 spots, the whole piece is annealed again, and if you want to, you can tidy these edges up a little bit more. You can close them completely if you wish. Just be sure that you hammer a little bit on the side as you're hammering on the edge to make sure it stays rounded. And then polish it.